Thank you very much, Alan. Good evening. Thank you very much to everyone who has attended this meeting this evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Tunbridge and Moorland Cabinet. For the benefit of anyone who is watching online on our YouTube channel, members of the Cabinet are present in the chamber this evening, and these members will be voting on proposals. There are other members of the Council in attendance and other members of the Council who will be participating remotely via Microsoft Teams. They can take part in any discussions when invited to. They can ask questions, but what they can't do is vote. And I draw everyone's attention to agenda item 1. This sets out the guidance on how meetings will be conducted, including the ground rules. Before we start, for the benefit of members of the public here in the chamber and anyone watching on YouTube, we will confirm attendance of voting members and ask officers advising us to introduce themselves. So I shall start by introducing me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Matt Borton. I'm leader of Tunbridge and Moorland Borough Council and chair Cabinet. Starting with Cabinet members, Robin Bess, do you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you, leader. Cabinet member for climate change, regeneration and property. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin Coffin.
Thank you, Martin Coffin, Cabinet member for transformation and infrastructure.
Des Kears.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the Cabinet member for community services.
Kim Tanner.
Good evening, everyone. Kim Tanner, Cabinet member for finance and housing.
And Mike Taylor.
Good evening, everyone. Cabinet member for planning.
Thank you. I'll now ask officers to introduce themselves, perhaps off around here.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm Sharon Shelton, the Director of Finance and Transformation.
Good evening, everybody. Damien Roberts, Chief Executive.
Good evening, Sally Wang, Democratic Services Officer.
Robert.
Good evening. I'm Robert Stiles, Director of Street Scene, Leisure and Technical Services.
Good evening, Darren Lanes, Head of Street Scene and Leisure.
Jill.
Good evening, Jill Fox, Policy, Scrutiny and Communities Manager.
And then online we should have Adrian Stanfield.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Adrian Stanfield, Director of Centres.
Thank you. Stuart Edwards.
Yeah, good evening, Chair. Stuart Edwards, Head of Administrative and Property Services.
Thank you. Dean Radmore.
Good evening, Chair. Dean Radmore, Tunbridge Town Centre Programme Manager.
Thank you. And Jeremy Whitaker.
Good evening, Jeremy. I'm the Strategic Economic Regeneration Manager.
Thank you. Eleanor Hoyle.
Good evening, I'm Eleanor Hoyle, the Director of Planning, Housing and Environmental Health.
I think I've spotted all of the officers in the meeting, but if I have missed anyone, I do apologise. Please do introduce yourselves. And I say that to members who aren't in Cabinet, if you can just introduce yourselves when you speak to, that would be most kind. Right, we move on to the agenda proper. Agenda item 1 is the conduct and the guidance on how meetings will be conducted, which I referenced earlier. Item 2 is apologies for absence, and we have a full house, so no apologies tonight. Agenda item 3 are declarations of interest. Does any member of the Cabinet have any interest to declare? No, shakes the head all around. Right, agenda item 4 are minutes of 2 previous meetings, the ordinary meeting that took place on Tuesday, the 4th of March, and the extraordinary meeting that took place on Wednesday, the 19th of March. I haven't had any queries raised of the minutes in advance of this meeting, so I don't see any indications that there are queries. So can we agree those minutes, both meetings? That was agreed, and I shall sign them. Right, we now move on to agenda item 5, which is a petition we've received to save Westmoreland Farmers Market. The council has received a petition asking that the 4-hour parking restriction for traders at the Westmoreland Farmers Market be lifted so that they can continue to provide a farmers market on the 4th Sunday of each month in Westmoreland. Can I ask everyone who hasn't familiarised themselves with Part 4 rules petition scheme in our constitution, I can't blame you if you haven't, just to divert your attention there, it is included as an annex, because that states how the petition will be heard today. So I hope you don't mind, but for the benefit of everyone here and watching, I shall just read that out. I know many of us are familiar with it. And that is, there's a maximum of 2 members of a deputation may address the cabinets for no longer than 5 minutes each, in line with council and committee procedure rules. One of these speakers should be the petition organiser. I understand that the 2 petition organisers are both borough councillors, Trudy Dean and Roger Roud. So you both have 5 minutes each. I don't know who wants to speak first. Trudy, do you want to go first? Right, you can, I suppose your 5 minutes can start now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm hopeful not to have to use them all. Thank you for distributing the opening statement and petition scheme that we report, which we submitted just after Christmas. So I think that tells you probably everything that you ever needed to know about Westmoreland Market, and maybe some that you didn't need to know. But I wanted to make clear to the Cabinet that the market is extremely important to us historically as well as in the modern times. Our market charter dates from 1103 and is only predated by the 2 cathedral cities and the Cinque Ports. So it's very ancient indeed. And I'm told that if you don't agree what we want, we can go and speak to the King about it. The modern market also is one of the oldest. It's the 9th oldest in the county and is in its 25th year of celebrations. And it's 25th year of its running under the organisers, Mr. and Mrs. Woodfall, who are with us today, I'm glad to say. And the 25th year of celebrations are awaiting our decision today. The problem is very simple. In all the parking areas of Westmoreland, a maximum of 4 hours of parking was allowed, and in all car parks and on street. And although the market itself is open for 4 hours, up to 8 hours is required for setting up and packing up, which has to be properly supervised for public safety, because unusually Westmoreland Farmers Market is held on the market square within an operating road and has to have a road closure order, which has to be supervised. So we have oh, I see. Okay. Yes. I'll avoid the temptation to start again. So what we have is stallholders in our market who also go to Tunbridge Market and trade there. Those on the second Sunday when they are in Tunbridge, those vehicles which cannot park within their closed order, which is in the car park itself, buy the extra hours they need, and they can buy the extra hours up to 23 hours of stay. The same traders come down to Westmoreland on the 4th Sunday and they can only have 4 hours. That strikes us as both unfair, but also what it means is that we cannot have the same size of farmers market as we have had previously, because we cannot accommodate all of those cars anywhere else. There were, as you probably recall, Chairman, 4 consultations all running at the same time when this began. So there was a general increase in charges. There were charges in new off-street car parks, which included the Ryash Lane car park, where some of the traders park. There was also a third of charges in on-street parking in Westmoreland, 93 extra spaces, and an extension of days and hours of charging on to Saturday, Sunday, bank holiday. So frankly, those people who were involved in the consultations could be forgiven for being a bit confused. But either way, protests were raised by residents, councillors and owners of the market themselves. Mr. and Mrs. Woodfall did write in the necessary time limit and specifically asked for guidance as to how the new parking limitation to 4 hours would affect the closure. They did not receive a reply, sadly, and have not received any communication since then. They did protest at the right time. The petition that you've received has got over 1,500 signatures, which are from addresses within Tunbridge and Morling or the adjoining boroughs. We specifically took out all of those signatures which were beyond that. So, Chairman, it's a very simple problem and it could be solved in a number of simple ways. At the end of the report which I submitted, we looked at 8 or 9 different alternative ways of implementing it. And my colleague, Mr. Roud, is going to now go a little further into that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trudy. Roger Roud, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think Trudy has sort of outlined everything really. One little point there, so some of the signatures taken out are from market traders. Now, not all of those market traders are live within our borough. Some of them come from as far away as West London, specifically to trade at West Malling. There are some from the coast down in Dover, Rye, and I personally went round and spoke to every trader on that market at least 3 times. None of them were against the parking charge at all. They were all happy to pay, but the problem they've got is they go to Tunbridge as well, and that, as Trudy said, they're allowed to buy extra hours. So my question is, what's the difference between Tunbridge and West Malling markets? I don't think there is a difference. As there is, why is there a difference in the parking standards? Surely they should be the same across the borough. If we were to put a market, let's say in Borough Green, would they have a separate one completely? I think not. And one point I would say, as councillors, we register our vehicles so that we can park within our car parks if we're on council business free of charge. Can we not apply the same rule to market traders and register those? It's only 12, at worst, 12 days per year, not anything more. We're not talking about weekday parking. It's just on a Sunday or the full Sunday of every month. So why can't we use the same system there? I don't see that the technology is impossible. I'm sure within the Ringo system there must be a way of doing that. It's electronic, and electronics does say a lot for us in this world. We all rely on it. I know it's difficult to get a signal in West Malling, but I'm sure that I know, in fact, because I do it myself, you can actually book your parking before you leave home. I go into Maidstone quite a lot, and I know where the car parks are where I can park, and I usually book it before I leave home because the signal in Maidstone is just as bad as it is in West Malling. So it's not impossible to do, and we could actually just register their vehicles as we do with our own, and if necessary, issue them with a window sticker or whatever to say this is a market trader's vehicle. It's allowed to park for, let's say, 8 hours or whatever. Most of them are there from about 7 in the morning to set up. We've already heard from Trudy that if they park within the market, that's okay, but there isn't room to extend the area, which has been, I believe, suggested to the south of the car park behind Tesco's is just not viable. That reduces the actual shoppers area for parking within that Tesco car park as well. So it just needs looking at in greater detail and with a bit more how can I say, sympathy, that these guys are there to make a living. They're there to bring trade to the borough, to West Malling, and to people generally. It's a great market. There's a whole host of variety of different products there. As I say, people come from all over Kent and West Sussex and South and West London just to trade at West Malling. We must be doing something wrong if we can't let them park for the amount of time they need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Roger, and thank you, Trudy, for presenting the petition. As always, with Cabinet meetings, I'll ask any members who aren't in Cabinet whether they wish to speak first, and then Cabinet members have all of their views before taking their decisions. So I see a hand online. Mark Hood. Mark, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to support Trudy and Roger. I think that their suggestions are very fair. As someone who's advocated fairness in parking across the borough, I think that enabling market traders to have some kind of permit system shouldn't be beyond the capabilities of the council. We need to make sure that that market is sustainable because it's a huge asset to the people of West Malling. and that whole area up there. So I absolutely commend the suggestion of sorting this out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bill Banks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm not a member of your committee, but what I would say is that this has been a long, hard debate, parking generally across the borough. And I can remember the debate when it came to Martin Square. I think the whole thing and what happened during that debate is there was an element of compromise. I don't think everybody got what they wanted, but in actual fact, we moved from a situation where parking fees were going to start from immediately when people parked, then it moved to half an hour, then it actually moved to an hour. And it got to a situation where within Martin Square, people could actually go to the chemist and do various jobs that they needed to do without basically getting into a situation of taking the alternative and not using Martin Square, going to other retail areas. I think this is another case. It's a situation where compromise is called for. I think really I can't believe in actual fact that the Cabinet would actually look at this in not in a sympathetic way, because I think, as has been previously said, this is an important market. This is basically the least that we could do, basically, to ensure that the market keeps going. If the market doesn't keep going, I think we're going to be in a situation where it won't be a revenue gaining exercise, it will be a revenue deficient exercise. So I'd be grateful if the Cabinet thought very carefully before they make their final decision. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for coming and speaking. Any other contributions? Don't see any other hands online. In which case, I'll hand over to Cabinet members for any contributions. Parking falls in Martin's portfolio. So, Martin, do you wish to kick off?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. And thank you to the organisers of the petition. And thank you for the comments you've made earlier. I note the comment about no opposition to that of charges. I would urge my colleagues on the Cabinet to agree to the extension of parking in Ryash Lane. It's a very simple thing to do, and draw their attention to 12.2, which explains the process by which this is done. And that is, we need to issue a notice of variation for not less than 21 days. It's all written down there. And then we have to change the signage to allow parking for greater than 4 hours in the Ryash Lane car park. What I also suggest we do, which is not on the papers, but we also tidy up another issue, which is in Westmoreland, and that is for the parents who park in Ryash Lane to collect their children from the school. At the moment, they fall within the period that they're not allowed to do so. We can reflect that by changing that by approximately 15 minutes. That makes them to be able to park in that car park as well, clearing up two problems in one go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Mike Taylor.
Thank you very much. A much smaller scale, but I used to run the ANPR parking system for Borough Green Village Hall. And we used to have a system where you could create white lists of numbers that were exempt from the parking restrictions. That was a very onerous task. And I found it much simpler to just turn the system off for the day involved, which was the Borough Green Christmas lights. And you can either do it in the software or you could physically walk up and turn the router off. So I think we do need to compromise. Yes, we do need to protect things like farmers' markets. Thank you.
Mike, any other contributions? Robin?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, having been in attendance of this market as a stallholder in the past, I hope that doesn't put me in a conflict of interest. I appreciate the comments made by everyone on this. So I think I completely agree. Compromise is the key here, just as we've done with Martin Square with the parking proposals last year. So, yeah, completely agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. If I can just add a contribution of my own, I think we've always tried to be a Cabinet that listens to people, and I've always tried to accommodate different views, not all the same. I think Bill Banks highlighted it quite well in terms of some of the conflicting advice that we're given necessarily from members of the public. So I think if it's clear that people wish to be able to park longer, so we should help facilitate that. And I like Martin's suggestion that we make that amendment as when we put out the notice of variation by 15 minutes, just to deal with the problem at the school too. ultimately, this is something that any local member can request. Please contact the parking office or Martin directly if you have any proposals in your ward about parking, and we can see how we can see how we can accommodate that. And that's something that we've always tried to do, and I'd like to think we can continue it. I don't see any other contributions, so perhaps we'll move on to the recommendations. As this is a petition, we have to either take the action requested in the petition, not take the action requested in the petition, or identify a different action. I think, Martin, what you're proposing is we do take the action that's taken in the petition, and that the council issues a notice of variation. It's displayed in the car park affected and publicised in local press for not less than 21 days, and a change can come into effect. I summarise that correctly, Martin? Yeah, excellent. Happy to second that. Can we agree that? Thank you very much. Yes, that would that, and I should clarify that includes Ryash schools. Sorry, the Westmoreland Primary School parking in Ryash Lane, not Ryash Primary School, as in the village. So, thank you all very much. Thank you to the petitioners for coming. I was about to move on to the next agenda item, Roger, as we've finalised that.
Ask quickly, just how quickly this notice of variation will be issued.
That's something that we'll need to speak to officers about. Obviously, in essence, the decision as made just now by Cabinet will then have to go into the queue that we've got with all of the other requests that we've got for changes to parking restrictions. So I'm sure it's something that perhaps Martin and Robert and the parking office can take up in correspondence with you about getting that done as quickly as possible. That's why we always encourage sort of any local councillor with any particular issues come to us first and get things in the queue, because Parking Action Plan, I think, has got a queue of 175 different locations on there. But we'll try not to. We'll try and get it done sooner, but it will have an implication for other outstanding. I suggest we don't decide which is the priorities tonight, and we perhaps take that offline. That's okay, Robert. Okay. Super. Thank you. We shall move on after that to agenda item 6, which are the corporate key performance indicators. These are available on page 49 of the agenda. Jeremy Whitaker is the report author and is available online. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello there.
Do you wish to add anything to the report in front of us tonight?
I was going to keep it very brief, Chair. I was just going to highlight that yes, this report relates to the period to the end of December 2024. As you can see in the report, and I won't go through them line by line, but there's the good news and the areas of focus for Q3 highlighted. Just some key areas it's worth flagging up. There was a drop in antisocial behaviour and fly tipping incidents during Q3. Numbers in temporary accommodation dropped. Waste collection continued to perform well with 100% completion rates and the lowest number of complaints for over 2 years. And I say 2 years because that's as far as I can go back in terms of how long I've been monitoring the KPIs. There are still a few areas of focus still. For example, with regards to recycling and composting numbers, but there is a comprehensive programme of promotion scheduled for the year ahead. The 5-year housing land supply has dropped and is continuing to drop a bit further. And work is ongoing to deal with the housing register backlog as well. Just in terms of where the recommendation under 3.2 is highlighting, data has started to be collated with regards to Q4 and end of year reporting, and subject to approvals. The end of year report we're looking to make available May, early June of this year. So Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Just before I come to any members with their hands up, so please do put your hand up. Perhaps I can just take the opportunity to say how great it is to see some of our KPIs moving in absolutely the right direction. I want to point out in particular that reports of antisocial behaviour has dropped, which I'm sure is no doubt because we had the antisocial behaviour community enforcement team that was in place last summer and that was won silver in an award recently, a national award recently, for the success that we'd had. So I'm sure there's a direct correlation between those two. I don't see any other questions. So perhaps the other thing I would just say is I think there's 3 areas that are really interesting at this that reflect some of the work I see as a local councillor. The first is the 5-year housing land supply drop-in. I would argue that's because the government have changed the law around granting planning permission and frankly made it much harder for us, and consequently that's dropped our land supply. So sometimes these are out of our control. And 2 issues, both housing register and planning enforcement, that are picked out of the report are issues that overview and scrutiny select committees are really getting themselves stuck into at the moment. So it's really good to see that we're focusing as councillors on the areas in which our performance can improve, and that's reflected in terms of our KPIs too. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to move on from your words about antisocial behaviour. For those who don't know, the antisocial behaviour enforcement team will start again on May the 2nd and run through till early November. So we incorporate Halloween, which caused us a bit of a ruckus last year. Also to note that we're still getting parish councils donating. Last one being Kings Hill are contributing towards this scheme, which is fantastic. It would be great to see Snodland jump in there because I think that's an area that needs more attention. And I can see Sue Bell on there, and I know she's trying to do her best to get Snodland involved in this as well. But also I noted it as an area of focus about victim-based crime just on the up. Now we met a week or so ago at the Community Safety Partnership strategic priority setting, and just to reassure everyone that we take that into consideration absolutely, and the priorities for this year do not reflect national priorities because we want to reflect priorities that happen in Tunbridge and Malling. And whilst we had lots of national speakers, they totally understood and get where we're coming from. So we're going to focus on acquisitive crime, which includes shoplifting, theft and burglary. Antisocial behaviour is still on there, but that also includes environmental crime. Exploitation, this is where we get a bit nationalised, to include gangs, modern slavery, human trafficking, child sexual exploitation, and the prevent agenda in total. And then clearly, to reflect upon that rising trend there about victim-based, is safeguarding people at risk of harm, which includes domestic abuse, violence against women and girls, stalking, serious violence, fraud and scams. So we've got a big range there, lots of actions has been taken away, and we're hoping to make a bit of an impact on that, or a big impact on that next time we meet and speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Des. No, absolutely concur with that. Kim?
Thanks, Matt. Both you and Jeremy mentioned the housing register, and I feel I should just explain that we've had higher than normal applications coming in over the last few months, which isn't really helping in getting the backlog cleared. But clearing this backlog is a priority, and we're looking at staffing numbers that are required to get that done in the very near future. So we'd like to be able to report something better very soon. Thank you.
Absolutely, Kim, and we'll come on to the notice of forthcoming key decisions at the end because it is on there for a reason. I don't see any other. Oh, Martin, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to make mention of a couple of things that fall within my remit, and that is the recycling rate, which slightly dropped this last quarter. But we are looking to have a campaign, obviously time and officer time permitting, to try and increase that again. It is very much something within our grasp. And the other one to mention is the number of fly tip incidents, because as it says in the report here, that Tunbridge and Malling is the 5th lowest in Kent, but with the 2nd highest in the number of incidents actually investigated. Now, of course, we've got a new litter team active. They've been running, I think, for 3 or 4 weeks, if that's right. And we hope to see them investigating some of the fly tips as well, because it's a real scourge on our rural borough, And if we can do anything to prosecute, we will be behind it, certainly.
Absolutely, and pleased to see that our enforcement contractor started off very well. I've had experience with them in my own ward, in on the ball. So that is super. Right, I don't see any other hands up. Jeremy rightly pointed attention to paragraph 4.4 and how we're slightly changing how key performance indicators are reported going forward, in line with the annual service delivery plan that was agreed by council. I was going to say last month. It was actually February now, but time flies, doesn't it? So we propose that course of 4 is shared on the website, which seems sensible given the decision that was taken. So can we note the key performance indicators, please, Cabinet? And is everyone happy to approve the recommendation at 3.2 in terms of how course of reported? Thank you very much. Very prompt and eager. Right. We move on to page 71, which is agenda item 7. This is the 50th anniversary grant scheme. Jill, you authored the report. Do you wish to say anything?
Yes, just briefly. It's fair to say that we've had a very, very good response to this grant scheme, more so than previous similar rounds, actually. So that's obviously good news, but comes with an obvious problem of we were way oversubscribed. So we had a total of 77 applications. 67 of those were eligible, and the amounts requested came to over 150,000, and obviously the pot was only 50,000. So we did have to make some tough decisions in line with the grant criteria that you had agreed at your previous meeting in December. So the proposal is set out in section 5. There was no perfect solution, but we opted to try to spread the money out to as many of the eligible applicants as we could. So the suggestion is that those that the applicants with a score of 20 or more receive 60% of the amount that they requested. The next level down, the 19 to 16 scores got 750. We also scored 750 to those that had 15 or 14 and they hadn't had funding from us before. There was some surplus money left over and we opted to uplift one of the grants for the RBLI. We felt that was important to demonstrate our commitment to the Armed Forces Covenant, and also the project that they were proposing would have been difficult on them. And the remaining funds were split between the remaining funds were split between 2 guiding groups offering support for families on lower incomes and to Trosley Church to provide step-free access. Using this methodology allowed 54 applicants to receive funding for this round.
Thank you very much. Jill, Des, this is in your portfolio. Anything to add to what Jill's just said?
Just to echo Jill's words, really, how difficult a task was this, Jill? The adjudication team found it really difficult. 3 times oversubscribed. That is good news because we are reaching out to a far more wider and diverse voluntary and charitable associations, if you like. And the bad news is we couldn't give everyone what they wanted. I'd like to have seen the Tunbridge Pride event get more. I'd like to have seen a few others get more. But you can't do it. Simply couldn't do it this year. I think I'm right in saying that we are going to have another round later on this year. So those that pretty much didn't get their full quota can reapply again, and hopefully we'll be able to assist. But if we keep growing and growing like we are doing, it's going to become as difficult every time, I think. So, but thank you, Jill, for your work on this.
Absolutely, Des. It's how do you get 154,000 into 50,000 answered on a postcard? Any member online wish to contribute anything to the discussion? I don't see any hands. Okay, Cabinet colleagues, anything to add to what Jill and Des have said? Robin?
Yeah, only to say that it's really pleasing to see this list of so many organisations benefiting from this grant, even if it has been slightly reduced. I just think the numbers here that we've got and how that's going to help them is tremendous.
Thank you, Robin. I'll just before we go on, leave a reflection of my own. I was back at university yesterday speaking to some students about working in local government. Thoroughly recommend it, was what I said. And we were talking about sort of different political theoretical approaches towards some of the challenges you face. And I was using this as an example in terms of actually we've taken the utilitarian theory, for those of you who are political theorists, in terms of we are spreading the love through this. We are trying to give a little bit to as many people as we possibly can, rather than just actually saying here is half a dozen or a dozen of organisations who will get their full quota, but everyone loses out. And I think, as Jill said, we're going to be able to give money to 54 out of 67 eligible applications. So I hope that those organisations who don't get their full allocation, which is basically everyone, sort of understands that when you're 3 times oversubscribed, it's very tricky indeed. But I think this is the fairest way to do it. And I'm sure John Stewart's to be proud, who was the opponent of that political theory. Anyway, enough about my lectures for tonight. We shall move on to the recommendation. This is at 3.1, that the grant allocations set out at Annex 2 be endorsed. I'm happy to propose that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you very much, Des. Can we agree that, Cabinet? They are agreed. Thank you very much. Right, we come on to page 83, which is corporate policies update, which we've got 3 different policies, and Sharon's going to say a few words.
Just a very few words, but the first thing I just wanted to say was you'll have noticed that the report has been authored by Glenn Pritchard. But today is the first day of Glenn's retirement, so he is no longer with the council, and hence why you've got me presenting this. So I'm actually not going to say very much about this. There are 3 policies for you to consider this evening, all of which have been slightly updated. First being the premiums policy, which now takes on board second homes, which you agreed about a year ago to bring into the premiums policy. Second one is discretionary rate relief, which affects business rates. And the third is the corporate debt recall. And all the details are in the report. Happy to answer any questions, but hopefully fairly simple report and recommendation.
Thank you, Sharon. Kim?
Sharon said most of it, really, but this is just an annual review that we carry out just to make sure that we're in line with government regulations. So thank you to everyone that got it done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. I'll look to non-cabinet members first. Not that I see hands. Cabinet colleagues now. Anyone wish to add anything? No. This, as Sharon and Kim have said, is very, very minor changes to policy. To note that. But before we move on to recommendations, thank you very much to Glenn Pritchard. I hope he's enjoyed his day of retirement so far. But he was an excellent revenues manager for this council, and definitely wish him well. And some of our collection rates in a very difficult job are some of the highest in the area, no doubt, to what Glenn had done. So in the event he's missing us already, and maybe watching this on YouTube, thank you, Glenn. Right, the recommendations are at 3.1, which is to amend the empty homes and second homes premium policy for the 25-26 financial year. Happy to propose. Kim's happy to second. Can we agree that policy? Agreed unanimously. 3.2 is to amend the discretionary non-domestic rate relief policy for the 25-26 financial year. Happy to propose. Kim's happy to second. Can we agree that, please? Agreed. And then 3.3 is simply to note the corporate debt recovery policy reviewed and requires no amendment. Can we all note that? That was noted. Thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you for coming to present those policies to us. Right. They are quite long policies, so we have to skip all the way to page 161 of the agenda, which I'm doing right now, where we have agenda item 9. This is the waste recycling and street cleansing contract that was considered by the Communities and Environment Select Committee on the 5th of March 2025. There are 10 recommendations that the committee have asked us to consider. You'll be delighted to know that I shall not read them all out, but I shall simply invite Martin Coffin as cabinet member as to whether he wishes to add anything to the committee operations.
Thank you. It was debated quite well at that committee, and I think what's come forward is the right way forward. Therefore, I have nothing to add.
Thank you, Martin. I'll look to non-cabinet members online. Cabinet member chamber have left the meeting, and I see no hands. I'll look to cabinet colleagues, and I see no hands again. Martin, are you happy to propose these 10 recommendations?
I'm happy to propose.
And I'm happy to second. Can we agree those, cabinet, please? That is agreed. Thank you all very much. We now come on to page 209. This is the Green and Blue Infrastructure Strategy. This was considered by Communities and Environment Scrutiny Select Committee at the same meeting. That's available on page 213. But you'll also see there is a small covering report that has pointed out that we have to update the strategy that was considered by the committee very, very slightly. It's explained at 5.1 and 5.2, and this is in relation to the footnote at paragraph 7.1.1 in relation to the definition of a local green space as provided in the National Planning Policy Framework. Then there's also some minor changes at paragraph 2.2.12, clarify that tree canopy cover assessments are based on the 13 ward boundaries current. I hope everyone followed that. Robin and Mike, do either of you wish to comment as this falls sort of jointly across your portfolios? Okay, Mike as senior, anything to say?
Just so I'm quite happy with the report and the amendments.
No, only to say that the recommendations in there, as in the actual document itself, the local plan, are fairly varied and very detailed. Tree canopy, avoid of loss of green infrastructure, and trying to achieve greater than 10% biodiversity net gain. So it's all positive stuff and a very detailed report, as you can see. So yeah, very much.
Thank you very much. Robin, I don't see any hands online. Neither do I see any other cabinet colleagues that wish to speak. So we are asked to endorse the updated green and blue infrastructure strategy based on what I said earlier. Robin, happy to propose. Mike, happy to second. Cabinet, are you all happy to agree? That was agreed unanimously too. Thank you very much. Right, we now come on to agenda item 11. These are our matters that are recommended to full council. This is in relation to the replacement Angel Leisure Centre in Tunbridge. Page 219 is the relevant page of the report. I should point out too that there were some annexes 1, 3 and 5 that are they're part 2 papers, which means they are restricted. I don't propose that we need to go into part 2 to discuss any of this in private, and I'd rather hope that we don't have to. But if anyone wishes to comment on any of those annexes, please do say so before at the start of your contribution so that we can go into private session. As I say, I hope that won't be needed. And if people do veer into talking about the annexes, I'm sure one of the officers around me will tell me very quickly to go into private session, but that's not the intention at all. That's the procedural bit. Robert and Darren, I think you... Mark Rhodes. Before I go into introduce this, you've got your hand up.
Chairman, thank you. I'm not a member of your cabinet. I just want to ask a question regarding the figures that are available in Annex 2. We don't need to go into Part 2, but what I'd just like to know, Chairman, the costs are based on the generic picture, which is on page 13, of a leisure centre. It's generic, I know, but are the costs that we can read in the annex equal to or in excess of current facilities? And also, it would have been appropriate, I feel, to have had a comparison figures, ground area, cubic meterage, etc., of rooms versus new rooms. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. What I'll do, perhaps, is I'll hand over to Robert and Darren, who were going to introduce this anyway. And if you wish to pick that up perhaps at the end of your remarks, that might be best. And then Mark, you'll have the opportunity to come back. So hopefully that's helpful. Darren?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report's being brought forward following previous reports to Cabinet and indeed overview and scrutiny. It brings forward a number of recommendations in relation to the replacement Angel Centre, allowing us to move to the next stages of the project. Very high level and in brief, the recommendations look at the capital plan that's brought forward, the capital plan evaluation. It looks at the proposed site for the centre, and also subject to council. It also looks at the proposed appointment of Alliance Leisure Services Limited. In regard to the recommendations, I think members should note we have brought forward an additional recommendation, and this is in regard to £400,000 being transferred from the council's climate change reserve to the earmarked reserve for the Angel Leisure Centre, and this is in regard to obviously supporting the provision of the environmental sustainability of the proposed facility, and it being proposed that it is carbon neutral. The other slight amendment to the recommendation at 3.4 is just to highlight that we would like it to read Alliance Leisure Services Limited, and this just reflects the specific name of the contractor as highlighted in formality. In regards to the question that Councillor Rhodes just asked, the figures that are presented in this report are based on the feasibility study that was done at River Stage 1 of the report. And in terms of what that is based on, that's highlighted within the draft business plan. And you'll see that the facility mix is highlighted within the draft business plan. And like I say, that's what these figures are currently based on, is that work done in that feasibility study. Thank you.
And thank you very much. What I'll do is I will hand over to members who aren't in the cabinet first to see if you have any questions or comments on this, and then cabinet members I'll keep as normal till the end. So does any member online have anything to contribute to this discussion? And Mark, I don't know if you want to come back on Darren's.
No, thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Right, I don't see any other contributions from online, so cabinet members, over to you. Robin and Des, your names are on this report. I don't know whether you wish to add anything or not. Robin, put your hand on the button.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just think that the programme board have done a good job in thoroughly analysing all the options available, and we've come up with this recommendation. So yeah, I think the way that the board is working at the moment is doing very well, and it's obviously a balanced political mix of people. So yes, I think it's serving cabinet well for recommendation purposes. I'll leave it at that.
No, I completely agree with that. Programme board's working very well. Thank you to all who contribute to it. Kim.
It won't surprise you all to hear from me as finance cabinet member to say that the cost of this is pretty enormous for us, actually. It's going to be the biggest project that we undertake in the last 25 years. So I would say, we are definitely going to have to borrow some money to finance it. We can gather up as much as we possibly can, but we will need to borrow. And I'd really just like to highlight that there's an implication from that, interest rates are much higher now than they were when we first started talking about this. And just to give you an example of how things can change, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about, for instance, £10 million over 40 years would work out at £620,000 a year. Today, £10 million over 40 years is £670,000 per annum. So that's in 2 weeks, it's changed by £50,000 a year. So all I would ask is that everybody that's involved is really mindful of the costs. The figures that are being quoted are quite frankly unaffordable. We've got to bring it down from that figure. Otherwise, the project isn't going to reach completion. And that's the bottom line, really. We have to be mindful of the cost of this because it's a really big thing for this council. And whilst it's exciting and a great thing for us to provide, it has to remain affordable. And I just ask that of everyone.
Thank you, Kim. No, very wise words. Now, I had moved off members online and moved on to cabinet members because I didn't see any hands. However, in generous soul, I like to think, I believe Anita Oakley has her hand up. So, Anita, I shall let you.
Thank you. I'm not a member of your cabinet, but I'd just like to support what the cabinet member for finance has just said. Every word, and I don't think we should get carried away in Tunbridge with spending the fortunes of Tunbridge and Malling all at once. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Kim was nodding in case you couldn't see her on camera there. Right, back to cabinet members. Des and Mike.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to, it won't allay any fears, but just to bring into context some of the work that's going on behind the scenes, and I really do appreciate and share Kim's concerns. But it is certainly the case that the council would expect a revised service fee in relation to our leisure trust. Leisure trust, they do all of our leisure facilities, and this revised service fee would be in favour of the council following the provision of a new leisure facility. And feedback from the trust already at this time is that they understand and accept this. This is supported by the draft business case recently received from Alliance that forecasts a net revenue improvement of between £349,139 and £570,645 based on latent demand of 20% and 40% respectively. The trust have been fully involved in the development of the business case, and it must be remembered that these figures are indicative and based on the feasibility study, which includes the proposed facility mix. So they could change, they could go up or down through the next REBA stages of the project based on final design. This is why it's so important to ensure decisions through the next design stages are commercially focused. And in principle, the trust are also supportive of making a capital contribution to support the project and a renegotiation of the service fee in favour of us as a local authority. And this would include discussions over contract extension. For example, a 15-year extension to the management agreement would be appropriate, in my humble opinion, because we need to invest in a trust for them to invest in us. To this extent, meetings have been and will continue to take place with the trust to discuss the detail through final agreement on figures, which cannot be given until the new centre design has been locked down and the business case finalised. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of everyone listening in and for cabinet colleagues, really, because Kim's absolutely right. It's huge. It's a mammoth task and a risk. It is a risk, but there are certain elements that would mitigate some of the risk. But we need to move to the next stage to be able to get the accurate detail to be able to work from, I think. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Des. Just juggling papers here. Mike.
Thank you very much. I think we're very lucky to have him and Sharon carefully watching every penny. These things can run away. I think the recommendation 3.5 and the way you've been modified will give the financial skeptics a degree of oversight at every step of the way, and I think that's very important. It's a huge project. It's an important project, but we need to manage it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Now, I've just been jotting down some notes just in terms of how we build that into some of the decisions if cabinets are agreeable, but I know Martin wants to speak, so I'll let Martin speak first, then do that.
Thank you. Kim's right. This is a huge project, and this is a hugely expensive project. And there have been figures bandied around already, which are quite eye-wateringly high. But of course, we don't really know the detail of it until we go through the various stages of the REBA process. It would be good, I think, to have control over the process, and it would be good to have a slightly changed recommendation that allowed us control over that process, so that we can analyse at each stage and perhaps almost like a tick box, say that we agree or we disagree. So we as a cabinet can control this. It does worry me in the same way that worries Kim. And indeed, if we can bring perhaps a more formal method of negotiation with the trust, and I don't know process, I'm sorry, Des, I don't know exactly how these negotiations work with you, but I think it would be good to have some sort of heads of terms arranged with the Leisure Trust that allowed a little more certainty than perhaps we've got at the moment. Because I think we as a council cannot commit this sort of money to a project if it's likely not to be successful. I think it will be successful, but I'm looking at it from perhaps a more financial side of it than maybe others have. So whilst I'm going to vote for this, I think it's a good project, it's a good way of doing it. I would just like a little more control built into the system. Thank you.
Thank you all. I don't see any other hands. Just a couple of reflections from me. I've been jotting down some notes that I'll share in a moment, but about how we incorporate that in the recommendations. But although clearly we've got to be responsible with taxpayers' money, that's absolutely the right thing to do, and we can't go building structures that are completely unaffordable. It's got to be viable. At the same time, what an opportunity this is for Tunbridge in terms of place shaping, in terms of the wider master plan, in terms of providing new state-of-the-art leisure in the heart of town. I don't want us to lose sight of recommendation 3.2 that requests that we approve Sovereign Way Mid car park as the location, because then that also opens up the whole of where the Angel moment and the bit of the River Medway that flows through that part of town. Real high quality development that really adds and contributes to the vibrancy of Tunbridge that's already there. So I don't want us to lose sight of that. And as you all know, I'm incredibly excited by this project, but it must be affordable. That is the law. So getting that balance right is going to be absolutely. So what I suggest to do, Cabinet colleagues, is I'll go through each recommendation one at a time, but and I'm hoping certainly the first couple we can agree. So perhaps start with 3.1, which is that we're asked to consider that the List C capital plan evaluation for the replacement Angel Leisure Centre, which is at Annex 2, is recommended to Council that the scheme is transferred into List A of the council. That's for the council agenda. I'm hoping, I don't have any comments on that is something we can agree. Agreed. Okay, 3.2 requests that we approve Sovereign Way Mid car park as the site of the location for the leisure centre. Do you agree that? I think this is where we might want to change matters. So at the moment, 3.3 simply asks us to note the timeline, but judging Kim's and Anita's comments, I think what we need to do is just incorporate into the timeline the opportunity for us to take stock on what we've got back and decide whether we want to continue on the path we're going or whether the costs are spiraling out of control. So what I suggest is that we're asked to note the timeline, which is as proposed to Annex 5, and have a small amendment that following each stage, probably Robin as but in consultation with Des from a leisure perspective and Kim from a finance perspective, confirms their agreement to move on to the next Reba stage. See odds of the head. So you agree that wording? Okay. Then I think what at the moment at 3.4, we're requested to approve the appointment of Alliance Leisure as the council's leisure development partner to project to progress the project through the Reba stages. We obviously worked with Alliance Leisure so far, so agreed that we can continue working with them. Okay. Then I think at 3.5, which we'll have to change 3.5 as currently is, and based on Des's comments with regards to the Leisure Trust, perhaps we can ask, well, I'll say the chief executive, but just so that you can then delegate it, Damien, to whichever respective officer you choose, commence negotiations with Tunbridge Leisure Trust regarding both a capital contribution and an annual towards the cost of the project. And as Martin was talking about heads of terms, perhaps bring forward draft heads of terms to consider. That's something we can agree. Okay, that was agreed unanimously. And then Darren referenced in his remarks earlier about transferring 400,000 from the climate change reserve to the earmarked reserve, Tunbridge Town, to help fund a project to reduce the borrowing. But as Kim referred to earlier, it was already changing sort of quite often. But also, frankly, the less we can borrow, the less we have to pay back. I mean, sorry, that's simple economics for anyone, I hope. So is that something Cabinet colleagues we can agree? Super. So I sort of lengthened that. So apologies to anyone following this. It will all be clearer in the minutes. And what I'll do is I'll just take all of those 6 together. Can I have a seconder for that? And Martin, thank you. Can we? Is everyone in agreement? Or okay? Thank you. I hope that was clear to everyone. We'll we will publish the minutes, but the long and short of it is the project to replace the Angel Leisure Centre continues, and we will be doing that on the Sovereign Way Mid car park in Tunbridge. Thank you all. That was quite a complex agenda item. We move on to page 245, which are the minutes of panels, boards and other groups. In these, we have the minutes of the Parish Partnership Panel on page 245 that took place on the 6th of February, the minutes of the Tunbridge Community Forum on the 24th of February, and the minutes of the Joint Transportation Board of the 3rd of March that's in supplement 3 on. Can we note those minutes? Oh, Martin, sorry.
So sorry, I just wanted to say something about the JTB because it references parking yet again, and parking that obviously we had earlier. There was an item that was brought to the JTB asking for the parking restrictions on Common Road to be reviewed. It came to the JTB and we considered it, and we're progressing with that review. So we do listen and we do get things done. Thank you.
Absolutely, quite agree. And we saw that with Westmoreland earlier, and good stuff. Right, agenda item 13, decisions taken by Cabinet members. As always, if anyone has any comments on any of the decisions by Cabinet members, please do put your hand up. The Cabinet members are here to answer for their decisions, which is why I'm going to ask them to say a little bit about it. These are on page 257. I will obviously take out the decisions already discussed and that were discussed at Cabinet on the or the start of March. So we have 3 decisions. The first 2 are both from Kim in relation to debts for write-off and housing solutions short-term extension of contracts. Anything to add on either of those, Kim?
Only really, Matt, to add that we've exhausted all options to collect any debts, and this really is the last resort for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And the final decision is should be, as it says on the tin, from Mike Taylor, recruitment of a 6-month temporary contractor, senior planning officer. Anything to add, Mike?
Just, I was happy to do this. I mean, recruitment of planning officers is still a serious issue, and we're still carrying a huge backlog, which impacts the whole service. So let's hope there's an influx of planning officers available sometime in the very near future. Thank you. Absolutely,
thank you, Mike. If anyone's watching this and would like to come and work for the council as a planning officer, then we'd be pleased to hear from you. Right, we shall move on to item 14. This is the notice of forthcoming key decisions. We referenced this earlier on the KPI item with regards to housing services staffing. We also, that will come on the 3rd of June, as will the Gibson East refurbishment tender. We have no urgent items at item 15. We didn't need to go into privates. Thank you all for keeping your comments to the public pages. And at 8:35, I can close the meeting. Thank you all for attending this evening. Take care.